All right, today we are talking about the Uber Light from Almost. This is a deck that I've been skating for about 6 months now. I think I'm 2 weeks shy of 6 months. Typically a board will last me 3 months and then it gives up and it's time to replace it. So I really wanted to see if a board that costs twice as much will last twice as long. And it has. Actually, I've really enjoyed it. I'm still skating it. Is it worth the money? I think it probably is. Is it Uber Light? It's actually not. We're going to get to the measurements here in a little bit. It's pretty light, but it's not the lightest. It's not even the lightest board that Almost makes. So we're going to get to all the skate nerdery and measurements in a few minutes, but a couple of disclaimers first. Nothing in this video is sponsored. I bought all this stuff myself because I wanted to try it out. I wanted to try it out because, I'm a bit of a type A. I'm an engineer. I'm going to use a little bit of a scientific method for comparing different decks and trying to figure out what works well for me. I'm a skater in my mid-40s, so, I like a lighter board. I like a board that has a lot of concave to help me with flip tricks and rotations. So that might not be what you're looking for, but if you're interested in the Uber Light, here's my take on it. All right, so first thing you need to know about the Uber Light is it is made using what they call a single deck press technology. You can see that on their label. And the way that other board shops work, for example, PS Sticks that makes boards like this, is they have a press that has a big piece of metal on the bottom, a big piece of metal on the top, and then they stack up 4 or 5 boards in between, and those sort of taco as they go up, right? So the ones near the top are going to be more concave, and the ones near the bottom are going to be less concave. So when you go buy a deck, depending upon which one you got in the stack, you'll get one that's either a little more mellow or a little more steep, both for the nose, the tail, and the concave. And if you're somebody like me who appreciates precision, that can be a little frustrating because you buy a board and you don't know if you're going to get one that's more mellow or not. So I actually really appreciate that single deck press. The other nice thing about it is that all of the boards you get from Almost that are that came out of the same press are going to have the same shape. So including this one. This is a pixel flip. This is the first one I got. So the way that Almost does it, they have a board shop called Dwindle in Asia. And they have a piece of metal at the bottom, that's the mold, and then they put in one board, and then a sort of a small piece of metal, and then another board, small piece of metal, another board, all the way up to finally the top piece, and they press all those together. And so every board ends up with exactly the same shape, because you don't get that tacoing effect. They also use epoxy instead of wood glue, which is what most of the other manufacturers use. There's pros and cons of that, and I'm not going to get into it, but the epoxy is a little stiffer, stronger. So what you get with an Almost deck is it's more rigid. There's a little bit less give to it than, say, that PS Sticks board that I was riding before this. And that rigidity can be a good thing. When I first got this pixel flip board, it took me about a week to get used to it. I was like, man, this thing is super rigid. But pretty soon after that, I learned how to use the steep concave and the nose and the tail and the rigidity to my benefit for doing rotation tricks and flip tricks. So then I got used to it and I thought, wow, for these old legs, this is really nice. And I decided to stick with it. This pixel flip lasted me for about 3 months and then it gave it up. As Paul Schmidt says, those little carbon or those little nanotubes inside of the maple, right, they all start to break and at some point in time, your pop turns into a thud, and that's what happened with this deck after about 3 months. So I bought the Uber Light for about twice the price, and I thought, will it last for twice as long? And it's now been almost 6 months, and it's still hanging in there. We're going to get to the measurements in a second. What you'll see is that on the pixel flip, the nose and the tail started to sag. And on the Uber Light, the tail is just starting to sag. The nose is still holding steady at 22 degrees, which is what Almost says it is out of the box. So we're going to get to the weight. And what you're going to find is that the Uber Light is actually slightly heavier than a cheaper Almost board like this peanut butter and jelly board that's the exact same size and shape. And I think the reason is that these cheaper boards are using slightly cheaper wood. They say it's a mix of Canadian and hard rock maple. If you look like on the pixel flip, it's probably going to be hard to tell. But the end grain of the wood, you can tell there's a certain density to it. It's pretty good. It's just fine. Like, it's a perfectly fine board. But on the Uber Lite, when you look at the end grain, it's even more dense. Like, you can tell it's a very dense wood. And so I think they're using higher quality, more expensive, denser wood. The Uber Lite feels a little bit more rigid than the Pixel Flip did when I first got it. And I think that because of that wood being more dense, it's a little heavier. So they offset that by putting the carbon fiber strip in the middle, and that took out a little bit of the wood weight, but you still have all the glue weight. So you're not going to get back to the same lightness as a cheaper wood. In fact, a deck like this kind of a deck from Revive, this Geiger deck, is even slightly lighter, or about the same as the lightweight Almost deck. But I found this wood to be even lower quality. You get a lot of pressure cracks right away, and it didn't even last as long as a Pixel Flip lasted for me. All right, what else? All right, so the Uber Lite, 31.5 inches end to end, 8 inches wide. That's the one I have. 7-inch nails, 7-inch nose, 6 5/8, I think, on the tail. We're going to measure that for real in just a minute. It's a 14-inch wheelbase. It's a. Hold on. It's a 14-inch wheelbase, end to end, and that works really well for me because I'm riding Ventures, which have kind of a wide wheelbase. If you have Ventures or Thunders, that's going to push your wheelbase back out again. If you're riding Indies or Tensors, those are going to be a little bit more narrow. So the 14-inch wheelbase is on the narrow side of what a lot of boards are. Typically an 8-inch board might have a 14.25-inch wheelbase. I really like the narrower wheelbase. That also helps with rotation tricks. It's a steep nose and tail and a steep concave. Let's go take some measurements and see what this thing actually looks like. All right, we're going to start with the weight because I know that's what you all want to see. Here's my little kitchen scale I borrowed from my mother-in-law. So here is the Uber Lite. We're going to put this thing on the scale and read 1282. Now hang on a second, that has a grip tape on it. How much does the grip tape weigh? So older grip tape tends to weigh about 60 grams or so. Newer grip tape's around 90 grams. So that's consistent. When this thing was brand new, it was 1210 with no grip and 1280 with grip. It is now 1280. I re-gripped it about 4 months in, so it's still hanging out at about 1280. So that is the Uber Lite. Now let's compare that to the board that costs about half the price. This is a peanut butter and jelly board. And this guy is coming in at 1074. So you got about 1210 to 1074, 130, 140 grams different. Guess while we're at it, I'll just play some of these other decks that I have. Here's a 8-inch Habitat Sucho board. Suco, Mark? I don't remember how to say his name. This guy is 1218 with grip. Here's that Geiger board. $11.54 with grip, right? So this guy is roughly in the same weight as this Almost cheap deck at just under 1,100 grams without grip. Here's that Impact board. It has stickers and stuff on it. Those weigh about 30 grams. So it's at 1272, so around 1250, 1240, 1250 without the stickers and the wrapping. So it gives you an idea of how much all these things weigh. All right, let's take some measurements on the Uber Lites. There's an app that I found to be very useful. It's called Measure, and you can, depending upon the quality of your phone, give you, better or worse results. But you can use it in level mode, and so you can see here we've got 0 degrees here in the middle of the board, and then you can go up to, flip it around this way, 0 degrees in the middle of the board. We're going to go to the tail. You want to go kind of near the end of the tail so you're not in the transition. We see we're at 22 degrees near the end of the tail. Flip it around the other way so the buttons on my phone don't mess up the measurement. The nose, we're hanging out at 22 degrees. And I told you that's what it was when it was new. You might not believe me. So let's put up, remember, single deck press. They're all going to be the same. So let's put up the peanut butter and jelly board. 0 in the middle. 22. Let's get there on the nose. Hang on. 0 in the middle. 22 on the nose. 22. Almost 23. 22, 23 on the tail. So another way that you can look at this is to put these guys back to back. Let's put the new one on top of the old one. And then look for gaps. All right, we're looking at the peanut butter and jelly board on top of the 6-month-old Uber Light. As you can see, the tail of the Uber Light is hanging on just fine. No droop whatsoever. Look over at the nose, you can see there's just a hair of daylight coming through. So the nose of the Uber Light is maybe a degree drooped compared to what it was new. 31.5 inches front to back. We got 8 inches wide. Maybe just a hair over 8. If you measure your tail, yeah, that's about 6 5/8. The nose is, yep, right at 7. If you want to measure how concave it is, what I do for this is I took a few little shims and I taped them together. And let's do this on the new board so that the grip doesn't get in the way. And you put a straight edge on here and you push your shims through until it's pretty tight. Draw a line right there and then you can measure across there and go, okay, that is on the centimeter scale. At that spot, that is about just a 1/16 of an inch under half, so 7/16 for the concave on that. All right, so what have we learned so far? We took a look at the measurements. It's light, it's not the lightest, it's light, but what is really good about it is that it holds its shape over time. So as I mentioned, this pixel flip, after 3 months really gave it up. It was starting to sag in the nose and the tail, and the pop turned into a thud, and I thought, I'm done with this deck. And 3 months actually is about average for me. Most of the decks that you see here that are kind of in that $50-ish kind of price range last me about 3 months of skating, 4 days a week, and then they're done, and it's time to move on to something else. Of course, we don't want to just decimate the forests in Canada, so what can we do to use decks a little bit longer? That's where the Uber Light seemed like a good idea. For about twice the price, will it last twice as long? It's now been, I guess I'm 2 weeks shy of 6 months, and it's still holding steady. We'll see how much longer it makes it past 6 months. At some point in time, does that extra 130 grams matter? Would you prefer to use more of these decks that are cheaper but only last half as long? Or I don't know how long the Uber Light is going to last. It might last another year for all I know. I don't know, these old legs, I might actually like that 130 grams back. So I'm probably going to set this up on some really light trucks and do some compares moving forward. The question is how does it skate, right? So it's pretty light. All right, that was a lot of talking, too much. Let's do some skating and show that this old Uber Light's still working just fine. Doing a driveway DIY session today on my little 2-foot mini quarter. Let's warm up with some flat ground in the garage and get going. All right, now you might be screaming at me through your screen, how do you avoid razor tail, right? If you're going to skate this thing for 6 months, there's no way the tail's going to last that long. Well, this is my tail right here, okay? I'm not even close to razor tailed. And the way I do this is at the end of each day when I'm done skating, I actually prop my board up and I put a little drip of wood glue along the edge of the tail. I'm going to do a whole video on this. It works really well. There's only one type of glue that I've found that works for this. It's this brand and that particular type. I've tried a few other types and they didn't work so well. But this one happens to match the same density as the wood. And so as long as you don't get it wet, because it's interior wood glue, it pops well, it doesn't chip off, and it basically takes the beating of the first half hour or 45 minutes of your next session, as long as you're not just massively scraping your tail. And so that slows down the progression of razor tail. So I'll do a whole other video on that, but that was key to having a board last 6 months. All right, I feel like this has been a pretty rambly review, and I apologize for that, but hopefully you got something interesting out of it. I really enjoy the Uber Light. I love the shape, I love the steepness, I love the rigidity. We're gonna see if I end up buying more Uber Lights or going to the cheaper boards that have just a little bit less rigidity to them. I'll try it and go back and forth and experiment. I encourage you to do the same. Is it worth the money? Yeah, I think so. It's lasted twice as long as the board that cost half as much. Is it uber light? It's pretty light. If you want the lightest board out there, maybe get one that's cheap with low density wood. Won't last you very long, but it'll be as light as you can get. Hope this has been helpful for you. Let's get out there and skate again. Bye.